Students, it's time to take notes because in this video, I'm going to be helping you decide which device to buy for your studies, an iPad or a MacBook. Well, being a student myself who owns and uses both devices on a daily basis, I'm going to be helping you decide which one to pour your money into by going over what each device does better than the other. And at the end, I'm also going to be giving you a further guide based on some examples of what each device could be used for. But before we get started, just a friendly reminder that the TechSpree Discord server is now up and running. So if you like talking tech, cars, and the likes, why not hop on there? I'm really keen to build up the TechSpree community, so if you want to be a part of it, which would be spectacular, the link will be in the description below, so you should go check that out. And so without further ado, let's firstly hop into what the iPad tops the MacBook at. So the iPad, as you probably know, is a touchscreen based tablet computer that first came out in 2010, and it's pretty safe to say that most people have probably used one at some point. From the $500 iPad 8th Gen, to the iPad mini, to the iPad Air, to the most expensive and powerful M1 iPad Pro at $1,600, there's something in the iPad lineup for everyone, including the used market where you can find some amazing deals on devices that are a few years old but still very capable. And so, what will you get from an iPad that you'll miss out on with a MacBook? Well, for one, iPads are more portable, as they weigh much less than MacBooks and are smaller and far thinner. For us students, that's a huge factor to keep in mind, since we're constantly moving to and from classes and are always on the go with our stuff. But fortunately, iPads are thin and light, much more so than a MacBook, so you'll easily be able to transport them to and from classes and store them in backpacks and book bags without any trouble. Whereas MacBooks, while they are still relatively portable, are a bit heavier and bulkier, and aren't as easy to transport, since they're not as thin or light as iPads. iPads are also better for drawing and writing with the Apple Pencil. If you prefer to physically handwrite your notes instead of type them, then the iPad combined with the Apple Pencil will allow you to replace all of your notebooks. Apps like GoodNotes work with the Apple Pencil to allow you to physically write down your notes but save them digitally. If you're an art student, the Apple Pencil also works with drawing apps such as Procreate. So the iPad can also be used to create digital masterpieces, although minus the masterpiece part for me, which is why I'm not using my own footage here. Now MacBooks don't have this kind of unique ability, since they don't have any kind of stylus obviously, and you're only limited to the keyboard and trackpad. iPads are also much better for your wallet. As a student, you're most likely trying to save as much as possible on your purchase, so if you go with an iPad, you will save a ton of money, since there's an enormous price gap between the two devices. To give you some perspective, the entry-level MacBook Air starts at $1,500, while the still very capable base-level iPad 8th Gen starts at just $500. So essentially, you could buy 3 of the cheapest iPads for the exact same price as the cheapest MacBook. Although Macs are more physically complex machines than iPads, so it is fair that they cost a bit more. But with all of that being said, however, this doesn't automatically mean that you should go with an iPad for the sole reason that it's cheaper. And that very important to know about reason is coming up momentarily, since this brings me on to what the MacBook tops the iPad at. So as you know, the MacBook lineup is Apple's clamshell laptop range, and like the iPad, comes in a few variations. There's the entry-level MacBook Air, the mid-range 13-inch MacBook Pro, and the top-of-the-line 16-inch MacBook Pro. Now recently, Apple has begun using their own M1 chipset in the MacBook lineup instead of Intel processors. This new generation of MacBook seems extremely promising, boasting amazing performance and phenomenal battery life over its predecessors. So, what do these updated MacBooks have over iPads? Oh, and by the way, I am using an older 2015 MacBook Pro in this video, but all of what I say will apply to the new models too. So for one, and this is why you shouldn't buy an iPad just because of its price, Macs can run actual programs like Final Cut Pro, Blender, or Autodesk Inventor. MacBooks run macOS, which is desktop software, and therefore allows for many more capabilities than the iPad. Now iPadOS, which is the operating system that iPads use, is still quite capable, but only for tasks of mobile nature, and the only external programs you're able to run are apps from the App Store, many of which feel watered down from their desktop counterparts, since iPadOS is mobile focused. So it's incredibly important to consider as a student if your courses will require you to run programs instead of just apps, because in this department, the iPad simply has nothing to offer. So as I said before, don't buy the iPad simply for its tempting price if you're going to be needing to run programs outside of the App Store. If you're willing to make that sacrifice, then yeah, by all means, go for it. But if not, then you should definitely steer clear of it. Now, if the MacBook lineup is outside of your price range, but you really need to run programs for your courses, then I would suggest turning to the used market where you can find less expensive older MacBooks that will still get the job done. Or you could even go for a cheaper Windows laptop, but that's a whole nother discussion for another time. So moving on to my next point, which is a bit of an obvious one, but I still thought it would be worth mentioning, Macs are better for a full traditional desktop experience with the keyboard and trackpad. If you don't really care for the touch-based UI of the iPad, or you're just not really prepared to switch over to it from a laptop, and you just sort of prefer the laptop vibe with the keyboard and trackpad, then the Mac is probably for you. While yes, you can can buy external keyboards for the iPad, apart from typing long documents, there isn't really any use for pairing a physical keyboard with a device that doesn't have the software capabilities to go with it, and for 99.9% of tasks, the touchscreen will do the job perfectly fine, if not better. So if you don't want to switch to the touch-based UI, then I would also avoid the iPad altogether. Macs are also much better ergonomically, since the screen sits higher and therefore you don't have to lean as far down while using them, whereas the iPad display will sit completely flat if you don't have a case that stands it up, and even if you do, the screen doesn't really sit as high as a Mac, and you'll find yourself leaning much farther down, which could cause ergonomic issues in class, such as a sore neck or back. But I mean, as long as you maintain proper posture, then you'll probably be fine. But if you're someone who cares a lot about ergonomics, then it's good to keep in mind that the Mac will simply be better for your posture. And so, those are both the strengths and weaknesses of MacBooks and iPads, from a student's perspective. Now, let's discuss what each device could be used for. If your student needs aren't super demanding, and you just like to keep things mobile and portable, and you just need something for basic tasks like taking notes on and using the internet, maybe even a few recreational activities like mobile games or YouTube, or if the Apple Pencil sounds appealing for you to write notes with or to make art with, then in my opinion, an iPad would be the best option for you to consider, since they're portable and great for anyone that won't be needing to run programs and software and are just happy with what the App Store has to offer. Because keep in mind that iPads can't run external programs outside the App Store, so before you make your purchase, you need to make sure that you fully understand that. Now as for MacBooks, if your needs as a student require running actual desktop programs like editing, design, or 3D animation software, then the MacBook is definitely for you, as iPads are just not capable of running those kinds of things. And again, if you're going to be needing to do that, then you should avoid the iPad altogether, because the software will prevent you from doing so. You might also want a Mac if you just want to stick with the traditional desktop experience with the keyboard and trackpad and the macOS interface, although again, be prepared to pay much more than you would for an iPad. So if your budget is one of your main priorities, then it's important to know that Macs are much more expensive. But again, don't buy the iPad simply for its price if you need to run programs. And so with that being said, I think that pretty much concludes my comparison between iPads and MacBooks for students. Each device has its own pros and cons, and they're honestly both great in their own ways, but the hard part is just deciding which one to buy. But hopefully after this video, you'll have somewhat of a better clue of what to invest in. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please make sure you drop me a like and subscribe to TechSpree for more reviews, comparisons, and the occasional unboxing. Also, you should follow my Instagram at tech_spree and my Twitter at techspree1. And again, the Discord server link is in the description. Thank you so much for watching. This is Tom with TechSpree, and I'll see you next time.